I'm Alex Murdaugh, M-U-R-D-A-U-G-H. Good morning.
I sometimes refer to Alec as a Tasmanian devil because when he walked in, no matter what you were doing, you started spinning because he was...
I don't know that I ever called him a little detective, but I think Maggie did. I may have. I mean, Paul was very intuitive. Paul was really an incredibly intuitive little dude. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, he was like a little detective. And, I mean, Paul would, you know, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Which leads me to, let's go back to Paul right quick while we're on him. So we have his phone. Do you know his passcode?
I don't. And I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a few people I can point you to,
yeah,
but I can tell you that he was super, super, super secretive with that, I mean, cell phone.
Did Maggie have a nickname for Paul?
His little, detective.
Little detective? Mm-hmm. And what did that mean?
She felt like that he was always looking to make sure his dad was behaving.
Have y'all been having any problems out here? Trespassers,
None
people breaking in?
None that I know of. The only thing what comes to my mind is my son Paul was in a boat wreck a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And there's been he was charged with being arrested for being the driver. There's been a lot of negative publicity about that, and there's been a lot of people online just really vile stuff. But when Paul's out and about, I mean, people routinely, I don't think I know the full story, because I don't think they give it to me, but I mean, he's been punched and hit and just attacked a lot.
She was worried because a lawsuit had been presented stating that they wanted $30 million. Maggie was crying. Maggie said, we don't have that kind of money, Blanca. And that's what she used to call me. She said, we don't have that. She said, if I could give them everything that I got and make this go away, she said, I would do it in a heartbeat. She said, I'll start over. We'll start over. She said, I just want it gone.
In tort cases against individuals, in this case, a negligence in entrusting a boat and in an alcohol-related incident, before there's even motions for summary judgment, before there's any consideration of whether a case has been made for punitive damages, do you typically get this level of financial discovery of defendants?
I think so. I think the judge ultimately agreed to give it to me.
He agreed to give it to you?
Sure.
But I thought the hearing didn't happen.
Well, you thought wrong. There's a lot of papers, so maybe you got confused.
He granted this motion?
I think so. You want to see the order?
Yeah.
It's the record, October 7th, 2021.
Question that the information that in part of the investigation where you and members of your staff and the forensic accountants determined that the clients did not authorize any of these transactions. I mean, you have no personal knowledge other than what's been told to you by people working for you or by the clients, right?
I also saw some of the deposits going into his personal Bank of America account statements.
No, I understand that, but whether the clients...
If they had some back deal, I don't know about any of it, no.
Right. And any information you have about what the clients told the firm is hearsay, as far as you know.
It's not hearsay if they said it to me.
Okay. And some said it to you?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The clients that we're talking about, these are all real people, yes or no?
They're all real people.
All right.
They're
And
all
these
good
clients,
people.
okay.
They're all people that I care about, that I cared about then, and a lot of them are people that I love.
Okay.
And I did wrong by them.
Yes, you hurt the people that you love, I know.
June 7th, 2021, what happened?
Went to look for Alec, and when I got upstairs, he was standing outside of his office leaning on a file cabinet. And he looked at me with a pretty dirty look, one I'd not seen before, and said, "What do you need now?" Clearly disgusted with me, which kind of raised my hackles. So I said, "Well, let's go in your office and talk about it."
You asked him for proof, is that correct?
Yes.
Proof that he didn't have that money?
Yes.
Were you able to complete that conversation on the morning of June 7th, 2021?
It was actually the afternoon of June 7th.
Afternoon.
But no, we were not able to complete it. During the middle of our conversation, he took a phone call, and the call was saying that his father was in the hospital and that there was nothing more that could be done, and he was terminal. So at that point, you know, I've known Alec since I was 16 years old, known the family forever. It turned into a personal conversation about, how's your dad doing? How's everything doing? You know, what's going on? And I basically thought he was leaving to go to the hospital to attend to his father, so I left the office at that time, and we did not discuss the money anymore.
You thought he was leaving to go?
I thought he was going to go to see about his father.
So if your brother had told Janine Seckinger during that day that your dad was taking a major turn to the worse, that would not be truthful, correct?
That would be correct. And the testimony I heard is he didn't say that.
He didn't say what?
He didn't say it was terminal or dire or whatever, whatever you're saying.
Are you based it off of Alex's testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Maggie called me that day and said she was at Edisto. She had some men working on the house, and Mr. Randolph was not doing well at all, and Alec really wanted her to come home that night. She hadn't planned on it, but that he needed her to come home, and Paul was going to be there too. And I said, well, Maggie, I said, you know, Alec and his dad are super close, and that's probably what you should do.
You encouraged her to go to Moselle?
I did.
Was that the last time you talked to her?
Yes.
So is there anybody that you can think of that we need to talk to tonight? Is there a name that comes to mind?
I mean, I can't tell you anybody that I'm overly suspicious of off the top of my head.
Okay.
You know? I mean, this is such a stupid thing. I'm even embarrassed to say it. But it just didn't make any sense. I just hired a guy out here, and he wasn't cutting the mustard, but I hadn't told him this yet. Paul's been working with him a lot. He killed the sunflower seeds in our dove field just recently, which is why Paul was here doing this. He told Paul a story the other day about how when he was in high school, he got in a fight with some black guys. And the FBI undercover team observed him fighting those guys and put him on an undercover team with 3 Navy SEALs. And that their job was to kill radical Black Panthers. And they did that from Myrtle Beach to Savannah. Now, I really don't think this guy, you know, is probably the person, but that's just so friggin'.
Yeah, that's kind of far-fetched story.
It's weird, but he was off today.
Okay.
He took his daddy to the doctor.
What's his name?
C.B. Rowe.
You said you rise early. What's your bedtime?
My bedtime, it all depends.
Okay. What time are you in bed?
That is a good question. Now, I can tell you my routine.
All right, tell me your routine.
Usually around 4 or 5 o'clock, I go get a shower, and I'm in my recliner usually the rest of the day.
Okay, so if you're not in bed, you're in that recliner. After you shower, you're in that recliner.
How's it?
And the day is done.
Done.
Okay.
Have you talked to CB Rowe since Monday or Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Because I know we talked about what he had done on the farm. Is he still employed?
He's still employed because I got to have somebody keeping it clean, but I can't keep him. I mean, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Now, let's just be, when you're hog hunting with dogs, I don't think you can use a gun, can you?
Oh, yeah, you can use a gun.
Oh, you think, okay.
Unless you're man enough to go in there and catch him by the foot and bring him out.
There is a video on Paul's phone of you and him on the farm that night, and you were in khaki pants and a dress shirt. You were playing with a tree.
I don't remember playing with a tree.
Yeah, I guess there was a tree sapling or something that had fallen over or bending over, and you were trying to get it to stand up. But I mean, the question in that is, when I met you that night, you were in shorts and a t-shirt. At what point in that evening did you change clothes?
I'm not sure. It would have been
Before dinner or after dinner?
No, it would have been. What time of day was that? I would have thought I'd already changed.
There's not a time.
Is he asking you now what time that picture was?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
I was tap on it because there's so many posts, but I want to say it looks to be about dusk. So that would have been 7:30, 8 o'clock.
I guess I changed when I got back to the house.
Better than it was, ain't it?
He said, B, I need to talk to you. And he said, come here, sit down. So I went in the living room. I sat down, and he was pacing back and forth in the living room. And he said, I got a bad feeling. He said, I got a bad feeling. He said, something's not right. And then he said, well, there's a video. There was a video that was out. I hadn't seen a video. And he said, you remember the shirt I was wearing, that Vinnie Vine shirt? That's what he said to me. And in my mind, I was saying, I don't remember a Vinnie Vine's shirt. It was the polo shirt. But I didn't mention, he said, well, you know what, I was wearing that shirt. He said, in the, that day. And still, I was just, I didn't say anything, but I was kind of thrown back because I don't remember that. I don't remember him wearing that shirt that day when he left. I know what shirt he was wearing because I fixed the collar, and the collar's a different material.
Have you ever seen that shirt again?
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
At some point, we were all back at the house together. Maggie had gotten home, and, we sat down, we ate supper.
She called it steak burger, but it's cube steak and gravy, some white rice, and some green beans.
You're a good cook, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
I was up at the house. I laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, 25, 30 minutes. I got up, I called Maggie, didn't get an answer, and I left to go to my mom's. She had said she might ride with me, but she normally doesn't when I go over there. And I think I texted her. And she's very good about answering the phone, so that was odd, or calling me back. So that was odd, but it wasn't that big a deal. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. when I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. We hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too.
Okay.
And I'm assuming Paul left because of,
Gotcha.
what happened. I mean, I'm assuming Paul went to the kennels.
Okay. And what did you do once Maggie and Paul left?
I stayed in the house.
Okay.
And I was watching TV, looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
Okay. And what time did you?
I don't know
wake up?
exactly what time I woke up, but when y'all get my phone, I think one of the first things I did when I got up was call Maggie because I was going to my mom's.
Pretty much all of that was lies, wasn't it?
The part about me not being at the kennel was a lie.
Well, also not knowing that Paul went down there, not being sure, that was a lie too, wasn't it? I mean, you're putting some detail on this thing, aren't you?
Not knowing when Paul left. Everything about me not going to the kennel was a lie.
And you're able to just do that just so easily and so convincingly and so naturally, don't you?
I mean, that's not for me to judge.
That's true.
I'm going to tell y'all this, even though I think it's kind of crazy. I was certain that I heard them pull up. I mean, I was positive that I heard, and people don't just come out there. We don't get passed through. I was certain that I heard them pull up, but they didn't.
Okay. Well, if you heard something pull up, what did it sound like?
I can't tell you what it sounded like. I just know that I thought that my wife had pulled up, or that Paul had pulled up.
Would it have been the buggy that she normally drives, or would it be a car?
No. I had the impression that a car pulled up.
Okay.
And
had you woken up by that time, but hadn't left for your mom's?
Yep.
Okay.
But it wasn't much time in between there because I left pretty damn close. It wasn't much time between me waking up and me leaving the house.
Okay.
And when I went outside, there's a wild cat that lives around that house. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was the cat that ran from my car, but I never had the impression it was a person, but there was something.
You talked to Paul, and what did y'all talk about? What was he going to do?
He was going to try to FaceTime me. He said, you know how the service is out here. He said, if I can't get the FaceTime to go through, I'll send you a video.
Is that the last time you ever talked to your friend?
That was.
Did you hear any other voices when you were on the phone with Paul about 8:40?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
I heard Miss Maggie.
And who else did you hear?
And I thought it was Mr. Ellick that I heard.
You thought it was Mr. Ellick?
Rogan Gibson asked me if I was up there. He said he thought it was me.
Was it you?
At 9 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. Not if my times are right.
Who do you think it could have been?
I have no idea.
And Rogan's been around your family for pretty much all of his life.
Oh, absolutely.
And he recognizes your voice, and you have a distinct voice.
When we were talking, he had asked me that. So, he had told me that he thought I was up there.
Did that surprise you?
Yes, sir.
You said it sounded like Mr. Alec had pulled up or something to that effect, driven up. Do you remember that?
No, I don't ever remember hearing a vehicle.
Okay.
I just remember hearing a third voice.
Okay.
Get back. Get back. Quit, Cash. Come on. Quit. It's okay. Come here. It's not bad. Come here, Cash. Come here. Post it. Cat.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth.
Hey, Bubba.
It's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Quit.
And did you recognize the voices on there?
I did.
Did you recognize the voices of your second family?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, Miss Alex.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
Did you ever have any conversation with Alex Murdaugh about what happened that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask you about whether or not you heard him on that phone that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever tell you what he did that night?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask him what he did that night?
No, sir.
Not a subject you wanted to talk about, was it?
That's correct.
With so many clients who unfortunately have suffered catastrophic injuries and are unable to go about moving around the way we take for granted, to be able to show a jury those things instead of telling a jury about them, the benefit is unexplainable. There's absolutely no better tool in the courtroom than to capture that in video.
Mr. Murdaugh, is that you? On the kennel video at 8:44 p.m. on June 7th, the night Maggie and Paul were murdered.
It is.
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Alex, why did you lie to Agent Owen, Agent Croft, and Deputy Rutland about the last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking. It could be anything that triggered it. It might be a look somebody gave me. It might be a reaction somebody had to something I did. It might be a policeman following me in a car. That night, June 7th, after finding Mags and Paul, don't talk to anybody without Danny with you. All my partners were just repeatedly telling me that. I had a deputy sheriff taking gunshot tests from my hands. I'm sitting in a police car with David Owen asking me about my relationship with my wife and my son. And all those things coupled together after finding them, coupled with my distrust for SLED, caused me to have paranoid thoughts.
All of this detail was people were hearing for the first time yesterday, like we talked about before, correct?
Say that again?
We're hearing that now, correct?
Hearing what now?
What you just said.
Well, you just asked me this. Mr. Ward, if you keep making the issue about first time you hearing these things, when I got arrested and I went to jail, we began reaching out to you to talk to you about all of these things, to try to tell you everything that I'd done, to give you all these details to help y'all go through these financial things. And up until the time that y'all charged me with murdering my wife and child, you would never give Jim Griffin a response to our invitations to sit down and meet with you.
So you're telling me I never responded to Jim Griffin? Is that what you're saying here today?
I'm telling you.
Are you saying that you ever before yesterday reached out to anyone through yourself or through your attorneys and reached out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and told them the story about the kennels? Are you telling me that?
What I'm telling you,
answer my
Mr.
question
Waters,
first, please, sir. Answer my question first. Did you ever reach out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and tell that story that you told this jury yesterday about the kennels before yesterday?
Did I ever reach out to law enforcement to say, I want to tell you about the kennels? No, sir, I did not. What
This is the Fifth Amendment line.
Pardon?
This questioning about him volunteering information on these charges violates his Fifth Amendment rights, and we strongly object. Any more, we have to make a motion.
He brought it up.
The objection's overruled.
What I did was, so.
Answer my question first, sir.
Yeah, for the record, he did not bring it. He was talking about financial
Sit
stuff.
down, Mr. Gibson.
Yes or no question. Before yesterday, did you ever bring up what you told this jury about that kennels to anybody in the prosecution or anybody in law enforcement?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to, Mr. Waters, because you would not respond to my invitations to reach out and tell you about all the things that I'd done wrong.
You've done that over and over again over the years with all of this that we've been talking about, haven't you?
I've done what over and over again?
The second that you're confronted with facts that you can't deny, you immediately come up with a new lie. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Waters, as we've established, I have lied many times, but I can't sit here and tell you that, what are you talking about, facts that I can't deny? That I would disagree with that proposition that you're putting out, that was what I did all the time. But in doing that, I admit again that I've lied to people that trusted me.
I would like to know exactly what happened.
Me too. The best that I've been able to put together.
Tell me, looks like. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I believe Paul was shot first. For the simple fact of where he was located.
How many times was he shot?
Twice.
I thought he shot Maggie first because I could tell he shot her in the back of the head.
What, you said he thought they shot Maggie first, or Maggie was shot first?
He thought, Alex said that he thought Maggie was shot first because she had been shot in the back of the head.
Go ahead.
We may honestly never know who was first, but I think it was Paul, for the simple fact he wouldn't have, if he saw his mother getting shot, he wouldn't have run to that feed ring, unless that's where one of the guns was. But you know, we've already established family guns were used. And if they came from Paul's truck was at the house. So where were they?
And how did they get down there?
And how did they get down there?
Did you just ask him, we've established family guns were used?
Yes, I did.
Objection's overruled. Proceed.
What was his response?
Sorry.
Would nothing be the answer?
Correct.
What are we seeing here?
So this is fading back and forth between the scan world or the computer world and reality. So you can see there that that's a crime scene photo that was taken the night of the murders.
Can you say to a degree of engineering certainty, more probably than not, that whoever shot this shot, or these shots, well, first of all, the quail pen shot was 5'2" to 5'4"?
That is the most likely explanation, yes.
Okay. And we know that Alex is 6'4".
Yes.
So I'm not 5'2" or 5'4". I think you said 5'2" to 5'4". But position me
tempting, but
All right, stand back a little bit because you got to stumble toward me.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to point like I'm pointing at you.
Yes, sir.
Paul is shot. Where's the shooter approximately outside the door?
The reach phase for the ejection port of the shotgun is just past the door frame.
Okay, Paul has just been shot.
Yes, sir.
And then in the defense's theory, you tell me what to do, and you act this out, and I'm going to do what you tell me to do based on the defense's theory of the case.
The defense agreed with the assessment that Paul stood there for a moment, bleeding down his injured left arm, and he slowly walked toward the door.
Okay, and what does the shooter do?
The shooter's coming in the door.
And then what does the shooter do?
He shoots Paul in the back of the head after he passes him.
Okay, and then shoots Paul in the back of the head like this, and where does the blood spatter go?
The blood spatter, the pellet defects, and one that I didn't know about that the expert collected was in the door frame at the top of the door.
Now I understand this is a little different than the feed room door. That's the best we can do. So what did you find odd about the theory, first of all?
I think the theory is preposterous, in my opinion.
What suddenly happens to Alex's phone around 9:02?
Pretty much wakes up.
You would agree with me that from 9:02 to 9:06, your phone finally comes to life and starts showing a lot of steps.
I do agree with that.
What were you doing?
I was getting ready to go to my mom's house.
Getting ready to go? I thought you took a shower already. You were just laying down on the couch. What all you need to do to get ready to go to your mom's house?
I mean, there wasn't anything to get ready in that aspect,
Wasn't
but
anything to get ready,
I was
was it?
getting ready to go. I was preparing to leave.
Doing what?
I don't know if I got up, went to the bathroom. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what I was doing.
And that's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing?
That's
going to the bathroom?
No, I don't think that I
Did you get on a treadmill?
went to the bathroom. No, I didn't get on a treadmill.
Jog in place?
Nope, I didn't jog in
jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
What were you doing, Mr. Murdaugh, for those 4 minutes?
From that 8:55:36 to 9:02 with a minute and some seconds to get up to the house, you would have like 5 minutes if it were him to do everything and get back to the house in his house to the phone. 5 minutes.
I think you're missing that the phone was actually locked at 8:49 for Maggie's phone. So the 8:55:36 is just when the backlight is off, but her phone locks forever at 8:49.
But it's moving around, right, at 8:53. You didn't look at the speed at which it's moving, but that could tell us something. There's a Siri activation. I'm just asking my question, Your Honor.
What's the question?
Her phone is moving around starting at 8:53, comma, there's a Siri activation near the start of that time, comma, and then there's a camera activation during this time, and some orientation changes, and then it goes off. Is that all correct?
That's correct.
Now, does that fact that we aren't seeing anything after 8:55:36, does that mean that she was dead at 8:55:36?
Like I said, this is just data that I plotted.
You don't know why someone would take Maggie's phone but not Paul's phone?
I would not know. I mean, I'm not there.
I mean,
I would not
given
know.
your job as a SLED
Mhm.
agent, I mean, would the fact that the camera was, the phone was in someone's hand and it was attempted to take a picture, would that be an inference you could draw? as
He
to
never
why
said
that
it
phone was
attempted to
taken?
take a picture, from what I heard, but you'd have to ask a technical expert on exactly what that camera function was for.
Well, you see, the thing is that the technical experts, they're not going to say either, are they? It's some investigator is going to have to make some inferences from the data.
So the inference I'm looking at it is that the camera was trying to identify a face to unlock, which it did not. So that is the inference that I would look at that instead of taking a photo from a layperson perspective. I would argue that between 9:06:12 and 9:20 that the same person has both phones.
Because there's an orientation change and no steps on this phone?
You have an
Steps on this phone?
you have an orientation change starting while someone's calling, looking at the phone during that time period.
And would it perhaps be reasonable that someone has that phone and an incoming call comes in, the screen says Alex Murdaugh, and it gets tossed out a window? Is that another fair, possible explanation?
That could be your explanation.
How long would you say you were at your mom's that night?
45 minutes, an hour.
And do you remember the day of Mr. Solicitor, I'm going to call him Solicitor, that's the way I know him, Solicitor Randolph's funeral?
Yes.
And I've been reading through all this stuff here. What's a repast?
A repast is when everybody come back after the funeral and eat.
Everybody comes back and eats?
Yes. He came in the room, you know.
You'd speak up, please, ma'am.
He came in the room and speak that, you know, spoke like he always do.
And what did he tell you?
That he was at the house. He was at the house.
Say it again.
He was at the house.
And I'm not 100% following you. He was telling you or saying to you that he was at the house?
Mm-hmm.
When?
The night of the murders.
The night of the murders?
Yes.
What was he telling you about that he was at the house the night of the murders?
That he'd been there 30 to 40 minutes.
Was he telling you that? Did he ask you anything about that when he was talking to you?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you what he wanted you to do with that information?
No. No.
What did he say?
He just said that he was at the house. The 30 to 40 minutes, I said.
You said what? Was he there 30 or 40 minutes that night?
Not to my recall.
Why are you crying, Ms. Smith?
Because they're a good family, and I love working there. And I'm sorry all this happened. They're good people, you know.
He wasn't there no 30 or 40 minutes, was he?
No.
Can't leave the witness.
Is it extremely unusual for someone who's on a straightaway in a rural road at night to give it some gas on a little burst?
A little bit of gas, but when you know it's 55 and you have deer and other environmental factors that play in.
Yes, but it's not that unusual, is it, for someone to give it a little gas on a straightaway in a rural road?
It depends on what a little gas is.
Did you look to see if he passed anyone on the way there or back?
What do you mean passed anyone? Like a vehicle?
Yes, that his car passed another vehicle on a 2-lane road.
I don't know how I'd be able to tell that with this data.
So you don't know if a very fast peak speed was simply gunning it to pass another car?
I do not. But at that late night hour, I would think that'd be, with, you know, the area, not a lot of people out.
But, I mean, that's just total speculation. You don't know if there's another car out
Just
there or
like
not.
yours is total speculation
Right.
that he passed someone.
You don't
That'd
know.
be correct. Yep, I do not know.
Yeah. If the person getting out of the car had seen the bodies already and already knew something was horribly wrong, do you believe that that is an unreasonably short period of time to inspect and call 911?
I'm here to testify on this data, not the hypothetical. I think you're asking the wrong person on that.
Fair enough. We'll move on.
Sorry. And I could see his brain on. and I ran over to Maggie, and actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. You know, I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I mean, I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to take, I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And, you know, I called 911.
Is that his brain?
That is.
Mr. Harpootlian said blown out of his head.
Correct.
If you tried to take the pulse at the neck, how would you do it?
You would have to try to lift his shoulder to get access his neck.
This way?
Correct.
Did you see what appeared to be blood on Alex Murdaugh's hands?
I did not.
On his arm?
No.
On his shirt?
None.
On his shorts?
No.
On his shoes?
I did not.
How long was this after the 911 call?
2 hours, 2 to 3 hours.
All this fresh in his mind?
Yes.
How would you describe the defendant's hands when you saw him when you were interviewing him? How would you describe his hands?
They were clean. Clean.
How would you describe his arms?
They were clean.
How would you describe his t-shirt?
Clean.
How would you describe his shorts?
Clean.
How would you describe his shoes?
They were clean.
You mentioned before that there was a group text about Mr. Randolph's health. And when did the defendant finally read that text?
The following day, so that'd be June 8th, 2021.
At 10:22:09, was there a text that the defendant read?
There was 10/22/09. He received a group text message from Michael Gunn and a few people saying she brought the heat from Miami boys.
I think you have in the timeline later on, he reads some spam text message about, I think there's a picture of a woman in a bikini.
I wouldn't call it a spam text message. It's from Michael Gunn, who would be one of his friends.
A group text?
A group text, yeah.
And then he Googles the name of a restaurant in Edisto Beach, is that correct?
That is what comes up on his phone extraction.
And doesn't he also call a videographer he hadn't spoken to in years?
Well, another close family friend, his name is Greg Alexander. He is the chief of police in Yemassee. I reach out to him and I just say, Greg, I gave him said something bad had happened. Or again, I don't know when I was told about the sheets, but I told him, I said, listen, something bad's happened. We got to get up there. When I get to Yemassee, can you please help make sure I get to Moselle?
Were you aware that your brother Alex had loaned Chief Alexander money at several points over the past couple of years?
I was not.
And when you got to the main house, take us right there, Blanca. Right now as you're walking in the house, what were your observations?
It was hard because I know she wasn't going to be coming back. And I didn't want to move. I didn't want to move her stuff.
Not to get too personal, but sometimes you can't help it. Were the underwear there with the pajamas unusual?
Yes.
Why?
She didn't wear underwear with her pajamas.
I don't know, it's probably 15, 20 minutes later. Mark Ball shows up. Y'all heard Mark Ball testify. And he came and hugged me and told me it was okay to leave. Okay to leave. What was left to fall, they would clean it up. It's the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life.
Yes, sir. What time it was in the morning that you saw Alex Murdaugh?
6:30 that morning.
Say that again.
6:30 that morning. He came inside.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Did he have anything, or was he holding anything?
He had a blue something in his hand.
Say that one more time.
A blue something in his hand, something blue.
A blue something in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Did he say anything when he walked in?
No.
Okay. What did he do when he walked in?
Went upstairs.
And we've been talking about a raincoat, but this isn't, is this what you would normally think a raincoat would look like?
No, ma'am.
This is rather large for a raincoat.
Yes, ma'am.
When you found it, it was balled up like this?
That is correct.
And now in the closet where you found that raincoat, were there any guns?
No, ma'am.
If a recently fired firearm was wrapped up inside that jacket, would that be consistent with your findings?
There is a possibility of that, yes, sir.
And do you recall during that October 12th interview, the subject of this blue jacket coming up with Buster? Specifically, I'm talking about the one with Buster.
The conversation at my house?
Yes.
I do not recall it coming up.
So you don't recall SLED bringing up, asking Buster about a blue jacket on October 12th of 2020?
I do not recall that.
So you don't recall his response?
I don't recall him bringing up a jacket.
Okay. Do you recall Buster responding that he did not recognize the blue jacket that was presented to him?
I don't recall a blue jacket being discussed.
Okay. And I think you also looked at it, and you don't recall.
They did not show me a blue jacket. There was no blue jacket discussion in that interview, to my knowledge.
Do you recall Buster's response in that interview to being asked if that could be Randolph's jacket, to him saying if it's over $15, no, it wasn't?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay what Buster said. He's asking to recall what Buster said.
I sustain the objection.
And then you agreed with what Buster said right afterwards. You don't recall that?
No, Mr. Conner. What I'm telling you is I don't recall any discussions of a blue jacket in that interview. I just don't recall that. I don't. So you asking me that, I'm just telling you I don't know of any discussions about a jacket in that interview.
Okay. One last thing, Mr. Murdaugh. Would you say that the Murdaugh name and legacy is something that's important to you and your brothers?
Yes, I think any family's name and legacy is important to them. Do I think my family's name is more important than yours or any of y'all's? No, I don't.
Okay. But it's important to your brother as well, correct?
I think he would feel the exact same way as what I just said, that all families are important.
We were just worried about his sanity, so we weren't going to go in there and harass him about money when we were worried about his mental state and the fact that his family had been killed.
I understand you have the right to be very hurt and angry about that, and are you hurt and angry about that?
Oh, yes. I take it very personally. It haunts me that I let this, or that this happened.
You feel like it happened on your watch, and
I think anybody'd feel normal feeling like that. It's a big betrayal of trust.
And then later I asked him, I said, Alec, do you have any idea who's done this? I said, we have got to find out who could do this. And he said that he did not know who it was, but he felt like whoever did it had thought about it for a really long time. We thought it probably had something to do with the boat case.
Right.
And we thought that up until September.
Right.
And then things started to change a little bit.
Sure. Well, were you aware that Alec started carrying a gun after the murder? You didn't know
Alec
that?
always carried a gun.
What's that?
He always carried a gun. So we called Jim Griffin, and he told us that Alec had been shot in the head and that he had been fired from his law firm for stealing.
Hampton County 911 was your emergency. I got a flat tire, and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me. And when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me. Oh, okay. Were you shot? Yes.
That is the composite sketch created with the assistance of Mr. Murdaugh.
Based on his descriptions to the sketch artist?
Based on his descriptions. On September 5th, agents returned to the scene. We were looking for any evidence of involved in the accident. We were looking for the significant piece of debris, and as we were searching the roadway around where the Mercedes had pulled off, we searched across the street in the grass area. The Mercedes was pulled off to the side of the road. This was directly across the road in the grass on the other side. DNA profiles of both Alex Murdaugh and Eddie Smith were identified on the knife. Randy told us that Alec was trying to convince the the medical staff members to allow him to use the phone so he could make phone calls. I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. A specific name and number were provided to us, Curtis Edward Smith. All right, so just let me get this straight. So you entered into did you pay Curtis any money for this?
No, sir.
You didn't pay him anything, so you just asked of a favor and he did it?
Yes, sir.
Kill me. That's a great favor.
Now, as I understand it, after he was released from the hospital, he went to detox in Atlanta.
That's what y'all told us, yes.
I'm sorry?
That's what you told me.
Okay, and we called you from a facility in Atlanta to give the statement we saw earlier, correct?
You called me from a telephone. I don't know exactly what your location. I wasn't there with you, so I don't know where you called me from.
You're telling me SLED can't tell where a phone is?
Mr. Harpoon.
I mean, if you're going to tell me that SLED can't tell us where a phone is.
Pose the question. You must give him an opportunity to answer.
I apologize.
Mr. Harpoon, you called me. I don't know what number you called me from.
My cell phone.
Okay, so you called me from your cell phone. I have that number, so it identified as yours.
Right.
But I don't know where you were at. You told me that you were calling from Atlanta. I took you at your word, but I can't testify to where you were calling me from because I don't know.
Did you ever subpoena his detox records?
We made an attempt, but we had issues with them honoring an out-of-state subpoena.
Well, I mean, you can go to a court in Georgia and make them honor it, or we could have given you consent. Did you ask us for consent?
No consent was given.
No consent was asked for.
No
right?
No consent was asked. No consent was given. So.
And so, while as soon as he came out of the initial stages of detox, you don't know this, but we went down. We called you.
It's Harpoon, you can't testify.
Who called who initially to set that call up?
I called you on the day of September 7th to reach out to let you know that we had some developments in the case, and I told you that we wanted to speak to Alex.
Okay.
You told us that he was in rehab or was en route to rehab, and we would try to make some arrangements. We had initially discussed agents traveling to whatever facility Mr. Murdaugh was in to meet with him in an attempt to get a statement. That meeting did not materialize. On the afternoon of the 13th, you called me from your cell phone to set up a telephone interview. Given the complexity of the case and the fluid movements of the investigation, we wanted to, agree to that so we could get some type of. At that point, Mr. Murdaugh had obviously the story that he told us was not true, and we wanted to take that as an opportunity to try to make some sense out of the investigation, given that you and Mr. Griffith were there saying he was ready to tell us really what happened.
So he, through his attorneys, reached out to you to give this recorded statement we saw.
On the 13th, you called me, yes.
Right. And secondly, he admitted that he had stolen money, right?
Yes.
He admitted drug use.
Yes.
And he admitted that he'd lied, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as a result of that statement, he was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And by that time, he had moved from the detox facility in Atlanta to a rehab facility in Orlando, correct?
Correct.
And you asked that he surrender himself, and he did that, did he not?
Yes, he did.
He had his son Buster drive him from Orlando to Hampton County, and I believe you all met him and, by prearrangement, him and Buster at his mother's house.
The agreement was for us to meet you and Mr. Griffith with Mr. Murdaugh, that no stops be taken from Orlando to Hampton. We encountered Mr. Murdaugh and Buster pulling into the driveway of the Almeda property. So outside of our agreement, so Mr. Murdaugh was taken into custody as soon as he arrived at Almeda.
Well, so perhaps if we weren't going to Orlando, stopping to get his lawyers before he surrendered himself would have been a violation of our agreement?
No, our agreement was that Mr. Murdaugh was to go from Orlando directly to your custody. Buster, I don't fault Buster. I don't think that he was doing anything that he thought was wrong. He was just listening to instructions. But we were supposed to meet him with you, and he showed up at his mom's house. So he was placed under arrest at his mom's house.
Well, we showed up at Mom's house as y'all were taking him away, right?
After he was arrested, yes.
Right, but I mean, we were there minutes after you arrested him, right?
Well, yes, because they called you. So, and I think I might have called you to tell you that we were arresting him as well.
Right. His cooperation, when I say cooperation, the statements he made I understand you were only investigating the roadside shooting, right?
Correct.
So you weren't investigating the murder, you weren't investigating, I'm talking about Maggie and Paul's murders, you weren't investigating the financial crimes, only the roadside shooting, correct?
Are you referring during my interviews with the 3 interviews with Mr. Murdaugh?
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to, in the 3 interviews with Mr. Murdaugh, the first 2 interviews were conducted with him being considered the victim of a violent crime.
Right.
And in the 3rd interview, you set parameters as his attorney as to what information we would discuss on the call.
I'm not, but he did, when you asked questions about his bank accounts, he cooperated fully with you, right?
After some give and take, I think, between you and I, he disclosed information, yes.
Right. And he admitted to you he'd stolen money.
Yeah, he confirmed that he had stolen money, because at that point we had been told by other parties he had stolen money, and on the 7th we recovered enterprise banking slips. So we knew we had documentation he had stolen money. He just confirmed it with his.
Did you know whether he knew he was just coming out of detox? Certainly many defendants would have never talked to you, correct?
Objection is sustained.
Did he have to talk to you?
Some of the best confessions I've ever got were from a defense attorney. So he spoke to me.
Not this defense attorney. Okay.
Well, he still confessed on the call. So
there are defense attorneys and defense attorneys, right? Okay.
In your experience and observation, having observed the scene and all the matter that was there, were those lines in the water consistent with blood?
Objection.
Objection sustained.
Thank you.
I don't need to be thanked for any ruling. There's no attorney-client privilege to national television interviews. The objection is overruled.
In this story, your last name is Lowe?
Yes, sir. I got married since then. I guess somebody decided to like me.
I missed the last question. Did you get married?
Yeah, you sure trying to court me? No, I'm just kidding.
Congratulations on your marriage. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Anything further?
Only this question. Did you think that Mr. Meadows was proposing to you a moment ago?
I don't know. I'm just picking.
No further questions. Thank you.
You may step down.
People who have hogs on their property, as a general rule, you would always take a rifle with you, be it day or night, because you never know when you're going to see hogs, and because they are such a nuisance, as I spoke to earlier in my testimony, you always want to be prepared to shoot them. So you would generally have some type of rifle and we with you, a long gun.
Objection, Your Honor. He's giving an opinion. He's not been qualified as an expert.
Objection overruled.
All right. You've had plenty of experience in killing hogs on your property?
Yes, I would disagree with Mr. Harpootlian, and I am pretty much an expert about killing hogs.
All right. And you've had plenty of opportunity to go hunting with Paul.
Objection, Your Honor. I apologize to the witness. I hate to go here, but let's talk about hog hunting, which I know nothing about, okay?
You might not want to go there then.
So let's talk a little bit about what you heard from Alec the night of June 7th. You would agree with me that, well, let's ask it this way. What your practice is primarily personal injury, is that correct?
It is.
Catastrophic injuries.
Well, I handle a lot of catastrophic injury cases.
Cases, for instance, where a husband and wife are riding down the road and hit by a tractor trailer. And by way of example, maybe you could give me something more specific. Husband's killed, wife's severely injured. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, is it your experience in people who undergo, maybe they're not hurt, but their loved one is hurt, maybe killed, in that situation, that's a traumatic experience for the surviving person, correct? To see their loved one killed?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you sit down with those folks and begin to recount with them what happened that night, oftentimes, I do a little work like you do, oftentimes those folks misremember or get times wrong, or because they went through this very traumatic experience, and the closer to that experience, the more likely they are to get some things wrong. Times, for instance. Is that your experience?
They can, but I also find that people who have been involved in traumatic experiences try to be very accurate with the details because they know it's important to me representing them.
And typically, you don't go out to the scene of the crime and interview, or the scene of the accident and interview them that night, do you? Typically?
Well, typically you don't because you don't know it. It's happened.
Well, sometimes in the old days they used to do that, but they don't do that anymore, right?
That would be very rare.
So you're seeing them in your office weeks later?
It can be days, can be weeks.
Okay, and in that atmosphere, it's a little more conducive to them being as accurate as possible, right?
It is, but oftentimes we also have the benefit of recorded interviews when there's a catastrophic injury. Typically, the highway patrol will try to interview people as quickly as they can, and they will. We oftentimes have it on video off a dash cam or sometimes body cam, but and a lot of times written statements.
And written statements from witnesses that saw it happen.
Correct.
And so when you interview those people, they have the benefit of reviewing whatever you have to help them get a better recollection of what happened, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the instance you're talking about where Alec told you he turned him over before he made the 911 call, whatever it was, I'm not quite sure. Before, I think, is what you said. If that would be inconsistent with something he says later on, after having reviewed other people's statements, looking at video, that would not be unusual in your business. I think you just said it would not be unusual, correct? Strike that.
You're trying to take me somewhere that you probably don't want to.
Oh, no, I think I want to.
Answer the question.
Withdraw the question. Let me ask you this question. Maybe let's get to the meat of matter here. Have you had to come out of pocket to pay back the money he stole?
Yes, and if you...
How much? Don't tell me you don't know.
Well, we're still counting, Mr. Harpootlian.
Well, how much have you paid so far?
We have had to borrow millions to pay back.
No, how much have you had to come out of pocket?
Well, when you borrow it, you got to pay it back, and I couldn't tell you how much has exactly been paid back as of we sit here today. But yes, and if you're implying that I would come in here and somehow shade truth in any way because of that, that's I would take high offense with that, Mr.
I'm
Harpootlian.
concerned about your high offense. Are you angry at him for stealing your money?
I have no feeling one way or the other.
I don't have any feeling about Alex Murdaugh betraying you and stealing your money. I admire you. I don't know that I can look beyond that.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection is sustained. There's not a question. The jury is to disregard the argument.
You are not angry with Alex Murdaugh?
I have had anger with him, extreme anger, Mr. Harpootlian, because of what he did to my law firm, my partners, my client, his clients, our clients, what he did to his family, what he's did to so many people. Yes, I experienced a lot of anger. But you can't walk around with anger. You have to find a way to deal with it and move forward. And I have done that. And if you suggest, you are dead wrong if you think I've come in here and told this jury something because of money. When we're talking about two people who were brutally murdered, then you're headed in the wrong direction.
Do you think he did it?
I don't have an opinion. I don't have the benefit of the materials you have.
Well, let me ask you this. You're angry with him, stole millions of dollars from your firm. You admit your firm's not even called the Murdaugh firm anymore, right?
It is not. I don't admit that I'm angry right now. I told you I've gotten away from that. I don't have any feelings because you can't walk around with anger. I have been very, very angry about it because of what he's done. And he did it in a very callous way, a very deceitful way.
And you carry no, I'm sorry, maybe I just saw some anger there. Were you angry just a moment ago?
No, you keep trying to push a question and don't want to accept my answer, which is what it is.
That you've just given your Zen, your Nirvana, your whatever the...
Your Honor, objection.
Mr. Harpootlian,
forgiven him?
I came to the scene of these murders to support my partner. I was there. I saw things that hadn't even been talked about in this courtroom. I was there. I love Paul very much. I thought I knew who Alec was. I did not. And it's hard to you might not understand, but it's hard to walk around with anger, and hard to even walk around with it when it's with somebody who you didn't know and didn't understand. So you might have be that way, but you know, I've got to function, I've got a family, I've got to move on with life. All those things happened, and it does not influence my testimony. I take the oath that I just took very seriously. And if you've got any indication that anything I said was inaccurate, I'll be glad to address it with you.
Well, the jury can judge that. Thank you.
We're going to replace you with one of the other jurors. Have you brought everything that you have outside of, you left some stuff in there? What do you have in there?
A dozen eggs.
Say it again?
A dozen eggs.
A dozen eggs?
One of the other jurors brought in eggs for everybody from the farm.
Okay.
Eggs in my purse and no water.
All right. Well, you're going to leave the eggs. You want to leave the eggs or take the eggs? You're going to take the eggs. So, Mr. Bailiff, can you retrieve from the jury room her dozen eggs, her purse, and what else? And a bottle of water. If you can get those things from the jury room. We get a lot of interesting things, but now a dozen eggs. It's certainly pretty interesting.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 570 and see if you recognize this particular item. You can go ahead and take it out of the bag.
All right, sir.
You know what that is?
Yes, sir.
That's 571. Where did you keep this one?
Usually in my car. I personally didn't consider myself to be law enforcement, no, sir.
All right. So you were just having this badge to your advantage and taking license with it. Is that correct?
I guess in some circumstances that is accurate.
See if you could use it to get away with something, correct? Get better treatment if you got pulled over.
Get better treatment if I got pulled over? I mean, that's probably a fair statement.
Okay.
That, yeah, if somebody in law enforcement saw that, yeah, I'd say that's true.
What office does it say that you are on that top one right there? Up there at the top.
State of South Carolina Solicitor, the Solicitor of the 14th Judicial Circuit. It says that as Solicitor of the 14th Judicial Circuit, I do hereby certify that, and it has,
Your name.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has all that data.
What position does it say that you're appointed to?
As the, okay, it says that as Solicitor of the 14th Judicial Circuit, I do certify that Richard A. Murdaugh was on July 1st, 2013, appointed as the Deputy Solicitor of Allendale, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties in and is authorized to enforce the laws in the 14th Judicial Circuit of South Carolina.
Did you ever have lights in your vehicle?
In the particular vehicle?
No, in any vehicle.
Yes, sir, I did.
Was that a government vehicle?
No, sir, it was not.
When did you have lights, like blue lights and stuff?
Yes, sir, I had some blue lights.
When did you have blue lights? And let me remember, you did 5 cases over 20 years, and you had blue lights in your vehicle, but it was your private vehicle, correct?
Well, it was the vehicle that I drove. It was a law firm owned vehicle.
The law firm's own vehicle. So how'd you get blue lights in there?
I had them installed.
Did you ask the sheriff at the time if you could do that?
I did.
Who was that?
I believe it was T.C. Smalls.
Well, I'm sorry to pull you back in. You said you just retired, huh?
Yes.
All right. Do you know the defendant, Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, I do.
Have you known him for years?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation with Alex Murdaugh about him asking you permission or even telling you about installing blue lights in his private vehicle?
No, sir. I never had a conversation with Alex Murdaugh. Matter of fact, I never had a conversation with anyone in my 39 years about installing blue lights in their personal vehicle.
I admit candidly in all of these cases, Mr. Waters, that I took money that was not mine and I shouldn't have done it. I hate the fact that I did it. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed for my son. I'm embarrassed for my family. And I don't dispute that I did it. I
understand that. But you understand that we have to ask about these things because we've heard about it in a very academic paperwork manner, but every single one of these you had to sit down and look somebody in the eye and convince them that you were on their side when you were not, correct? That's what you did in every single one of these.
I mean, every time...
Answer my question, yes or no, and then you can explain. I'll let you explain all day long.
Well, I mean, no, sir, that may or may not be true.
Okay.
And Mr. Waters, just to try to get through this quicker, I admit...
I know you want to get through it quicker, but we're not. So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money. Now, this is something... What's the date on that one?
I'll bring it back to you.
Well, you can tell me. I trust you to tell me accurately.
All right. Well, you know, it's kind of funny. It doesn't have the date on it, but I'll let you take a look at it.
All right, I'm just looking at the date of a check. So that's December 20th. So that goes 2011. So that gives us a ballpark. So that's 12 years ago. For me to sit here and tell you specifically that I remember sitting down and talking with Natasha Thomas, I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you, and I can tell you that I didn't do right by Natasha Thomas. I took money from Natasha Thomas that didn't belong to me, and I was wrong for doing that.
Okay.
And I admit that.
All right.
I don't dispute it. No, I don't dispute that. I don't dispute it. I stole all of the money, most of the money that I've been accused of stealing, I stole.
No, I mean, you stole every single dime of the recovery. She didn't get one dime. Isn't that right?
I have to look at the records, but if that's...
You credited yourself with legal fees, and then you stole all the rest of the money, correct?
I don't dispute that. You have charged me with murdering my wife and my son, and I've sat here for all these weeks listening to all this financial stuff that I did wrong, that I'm embarrassed by. I'm happy to talk to you about as much of that as you want to talk about. I'm required to talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. But the fact is I cannot specifically remember sitting down, the details that you're asking me for, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that in all these financial situations, I stole money that was not my money. I misled people that I shouldn't have misled, and I did wrong. I can tell you that. And I may be able to tell you specifically, in some instances, what I did or didn't do.
All right. Well, good. Well, we'll do that. But the point that I'm asking you is it's not just as simple as some paperwork. You had to sit down and deal with these people and convince them that you were telling them the truth in order to steal this money, correct?
That may not be true, because in some situations, I may not have had to do that. They may have just trusted me to do it.
Okay.
So that's my point, is I misled them. There's no question about that. But did I sit down in each particular instance and like you're breaking it down step by step? I can't say that.
All right.
I can say I did wrong, I stole money that wasn't mine, and I shouldn't have done it. I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck, had anything to do with hurting Maggie and Paul.
Okay.
But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
And I'm certain.
So
I believe that.
It was random vigilantes, the 5-2 vigilantes, huh?
No, what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that when Paul was charged criminally, there were so many leaks, half-truths, half-reports, half-statements, partial information, misrepresentations of Paul that ended up in the media all the time. And when I tell you the social media response that came from that was vile, the things that were said about what they would do to Paul, they were so over the top that nobody would believe anybody would get on social media and do that. But I believe then, and I believe today, that the wrong person saw and read that.
Okay.
Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdaugh, and they had anger in their heart. And that is the only reason that somebody could be mad at Paul like that and hate him like that.
Gotcha. All right, so we've got now.
But that's why I did then believe it was the boat wreck, and I believe now that the boat wreck had something to do with it.
All right, so we've got random vigilantes because of the boat wreck.
Now, I don't know that they're random vigilantes.
Well, you just said it wasn't the family or the kid, or the kids or the family of the other kids in the boat, right? So you're saying it's somebody off of social media, and you don't have any evidence of that, do you? You just believe that, and you're just telling that jury that as you try to explain the lie that you told for the first time yesterday. Isn't that right?
No, sir, that's not right.
It's not right. All right, well, let me ask you a question then. So what you're telling this jury is that it's a random vigilante.
That's your
the 12-year-old, the 12-year-old 5-2 people that just happened to know that Paul and Maggie were both at Moselle on June 7th, that knew that they would be at the kennels alone on June the 7th, that knew that you would not be there, but only between the times of 8:49 and 9:02, that they show up without a weapon, assuming that they're going to find weapons and ammunition there, that they commit this crime during that short time window, and then they travel the same exact route that you do around the same time to Alameda. That's what you're trying to tell this jury?
You got a lot of factors in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
shame for you is an extraordinary provocation, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
Shame for me is an extraordinary provocation. I don't like to be shamed.
Mr. Murdaugh, are you a family annihilator?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. I would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh under any circumstances.
Say that.
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie.
You lied to Paul?
Sometimes.
You lied to your father?
I'm sure I did at some point.
Did you tell him all the stuff you'd been up to over the years before he died?
No, I didn't tell him.
Did you lie to your brothers?
About financial things?
Yes.
I would have lied to Randy at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to him about the last time you saw your wife and son alive?
I did.
Did you lie to their wives?
I'm sure I did.
Did you lie to Marion Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstetters?
Yes.
Did you lie to your best friend, Chris Wilson?
Probably.
Did you lie to your other friend, Barrett Bulware, when you took his money?
No, sir.
No.
I didn't lie like I told you. I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission, like we talked about him. I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to him about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
According to what he said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July of 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about. I don't think Johnny asked me. I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that, so I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
Central Sub 117 scene is secured at a Whiskey Fox, Whiskey Mike, both gunshot wounds to the head.
Sir, I want to let you know because of the scene, I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle? Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir. It's leaning up against the side of my car.
Okay. You're fine, man. You're fine. Turn around for me.
I don't have any guns.
Okay. Yes, sir. I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son?
And son.
Okay.
It's bad. It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir. This is the firearm you brought from inside the house?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I went and got. This is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
He's been getting punched. I know that's somebody. I know that's what it is.
Okay. When did you get home? Right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. My mom has late stages Alzheimer's, and my dad is in the hospital. Okay. I left. I don't know what time. I can go back on my phone and tell you the exact times. Did you check?
Okay. Did I check what?
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that are that's what they're gonna do. Okay. When was the last time you were here with them, or talked to them, or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
Okay.
I rode around with Paul for 2 hours this afternoon in the pickup truck.
That's your son, Paul? Okay.
And at that point in time, SLED was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you. Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there.
That's correct.
But you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
Docket number 2022 GS 15, the State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116. Okay. Guilty verdict. Signed by the forelady, 3/2/23.
Judge, I tell you again, I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Paul.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills. I can just imagine on that day, June 7th, when a lawyer is confronted and confesses to having stolen over $500,000 from a client. And he has a tiger like Mark Tinsley on his tail pursuing discovery in the case involving the death of Mallory Beach. And having a father, for the most part, on his deathbed. I could imagine, or really can't imagine, but I know it had to have been quite a bit going through your mind on that day. But amazingly, to have you come and testify that it was just another ordinary day, that my wife and son and I were out just enjoying life. Not credible, not believable. You can convince yourself about it, but obviously you have the inability to convince anyone else about that. So if you made any such arguments as a lawyer, you would lose every case of that, like that. Cases you will never have an opportunity to argue anymore, except perhaps your own as you sit in the Department of Corrections. All right, Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably loved so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive.
You know, oh, what a tangled web we weave. But once I told a lie, I mean, I told my family, I had to keep lying.